Assalamualaikum and good morning, everyone. Today, I'll be presenting our case on different culture, focusing on the UAE and Dubai from an international business perspective. So, Dubai is very interesting because it's very global city. We see multinational companies, foreign workers, international tourism, and people from almost every part of the world. But being global doesn't mean that Dubai has become culturally Western. So that is really the main idea of this case study, which is Dubai succeed because it has learned how to bring different culture together while still maintaining its own local values and identity. So the case logic before I answer the question, I want to briefly explain why Dubai is important international business. So Dubai actually operates within two different realities. On one side, the local culture is informed by Islam, Arab identity, hierarchy, and the leadership of the ruling families. But on the other side, Dubai is also major international businesses still city built around trade, expat expect worker, tourism, logistics, and foreign investment. So companies should not look at the skyscrapers, international brands, and English-speaking business environment and assume that business conducted exactly like in the West. Right. So the business environment is international, but local culture still influences how people communicate, build trust, and make decisions. So the question number one will be, what forces shape the culture in the country of UAE and Dubai in particular? How similar or different are those forces from those that shape the culture of Western nation? So there are several major forces that shape the culture of the UAE and Dubai. So the first is Islam and Arab identity. So religion is not completely separated from daily life to all business. Islamic value influence social behavior, working practices, holidays, trust, and even the way people interact with each other. So the second will be hereditary leadership, which is the UAE consists of seven emirates, and each emirate has its own ruling family. So because of this, history, hierarchy, leadership, and respect for authority remain quite important. Another major factor is the UAE strategic trade location. So for a long time, the region connected different markets, and today Dubai continue this role as an international trade and logistics hub. Then we have also oil and state-led modernization. So all well gave the UAE the resources to develop infrastructure and modernize very quickly. And finally, especially in Dubai, we have the influence of the large expat population and nation branding. So people from many different countries live and work in Dubai. This has made the city much more internationally oriented. So the result is quite interesting. Dubai is modern and open, but it is not simply Western. That distinction is important for international companies. And next will be the UAE and also versus Western nation. So when we compare this Western nation, there are some similarities, but also have differences. So both were influenced by things like trade, economic development, modernization, and globalization. So the difference is quite mainly in the cultural foundation. For example, religion is generally more visible in public life in the UAE, while many Western business environments are more secular. Hierarchy and seniority also tend to carry more weight in the UAE. While for Western organization, especially modern corporation, may be more comfortable with flatter structure and informal communication between different levels of management. And there is also difference in how relationships are viewed. In the UAE, building a relationship and establishing trust can come before the transaction. In many Western business environment, people may be more comfortable beginning with the contract, term, and business objective. So both sides have some similar commercial ambition, but authority, religion, and trust can be handled quite differently. So the next question is, what kind of misunderstanding, or if any, are likely to arise between Western-based visitors and people from the UAE during World Cup, or sorry, World Expo 2 2020. So I think the misunderstanding could definitely happen. So because the biggest problem is that Dubai looks very international, so Western visitors may assume that the Western social and business norms automatically have applied. For example, the first issue is communication. Some Western visitors may prefer very direct answer, but in another cultural setting, disagreement may sometimes be expressed more politely or indirectly. If you're not familiar with the kind of communication style, you might misunderstand the meaning. So the second will be hierarchy. Western visitor may be comfortable being very casual with senior people, but in the UAE, showing appropriate respect to seniority and position can be very important. The next will be gender etiquette. Example, rather than automatically offering physical contact, such as handshake, it may be better to follow the other person's lead. So religion also can create misunderstanding, sorry. Visitors need to be aware of appropriate behavior regarding dress, alcohol consumption, public conduct, and periods such as Ramadan. And finally, there is time and trust. So a Western business person may want to quickly finish the agenda and move straight forward into the deal, while for the other party may prefer to spend more time establishing trust and relationship first. So these are not necessarily major conflict. There are small differences, but in the national business, small differences can create the wrong impression very quickly. So as for I would say that the expo can use base as the cultural bridge, which is the provide a platform that help reduce the cultural barriers. So the expo involved 192 nations and around 24.1 million visits. So what I find important here is that the everyone came from different background, but they were brought together around these three shared themes, which is sustainability, mobility, and opportunity. So these are not only UA issues, they are global issues. So instead of asking everyone to have the same culture, the expo created common area which is where different cultures could cooperate. In that sense, expo added as a kind of control culture bridge, and also it did not remove cultural differences. It simply made those differences easier to manage because people had common objectives. And then there will be if you were positioned to advise a Western company that was considering doing business in UAE for the first time, what would your advice be? So my main advice will be which is do not treat entering do not treat entering the UAE as only market entry. Treat it as a cultural entry as well. First, you have to prepare our stuff, your stuff. People representing the company should understand basic etiquette, religion, hierarchy, Ramadan practices, and acceptable public behavior. Second will be build trust before pushing for the transaction. Meet people properly, follow up, and invest some time in developing the relationship. The third will be use local expertise. Foreign company need people who understand the legal system, licensing requirement, employment rule, free zones, and procurement practices. Fourth will be respect authority and hierarchy. If the meeting or negotiation is important, the company should send someone with suitable seniority. And finally, remain compliant. Relationship building is important, but companies also should never interpret that as permission to take shortcuts around the regulations and the compliance requirement. So if I had to give one practical recommendation, I would suggest having a senior person responsible for local relationship, supported by proper legal and compliance expertise. And the next will be, so what companies or should do and avoid. So there are also several simple behavior that can make a big difference. So companies should greet senior people appropriately. Use for so use formal titles when necessary and allow some time for hospitality and conversation. They should also follow up clearly after the meeting and try to connect their business proposal with UAE priorities. At the same time, there are several things I will avoid. I would not rush immediately into price negotiation. I would avoid openly challenging or correcting the senior person in a way that could embarrass them. I will so never assume that because someone speaks excellent English, they automatically follow Western culture norms. And companies should not assume that Dubai represents every part of the UAE in exactly the same way. So my point here is that the professionalism in the UAE is not only about technical knowledge, it's also about tone, respect, and timing. And the last question will be, using Dubai as an example, do you believe that cultural similarities among people can outweigh cultural differences that exist in terms of doing business together in the future? So my answer is yes, but with one condition. So similarities can outweigh cultural differences. When those differences are properly understood and managed, business people from different culture usually share many of the same goals. They want growth, innovation, reputation, safety, and business opportunities. So these common interests give both sides a reason to work together. But cultural differences do not simply disappear. There can still be differences in authority, religion, gender etiquette, communication style, and the speed of decision making. So I see the process in this way. We start with shared goals, then we build trust, but we still need to have the right culture protocol. So when those three things work together, we can reach the business deal. So yes, similarity can carry the commercial relationship forward, but cultural differences still determine how that relationship needs to be handled. So in conclusion, to conclude, I will say that I do not think that the answer to international business is to completely change yourself to fit another culture, but ignoring cultural differences is also a mistake. The better approach is to understand what is local, identify what both sides have in common, and then manage the relationship with respect. So Dubai is actually a good example of this. It has both, which is it has peoples, companies, and investors from many different cultures working in the same company. So they do not need to become culturally identical. So they need enough common interests to work together and enough cultural awareness to manage their differences. And that is the way, this is the why cultural understanding is not only a social issue in international businesses, or it is a business capability. Thank you. That's all for me.